Hello and welcome back to the Poet Speaks podcast. So today I have a very, very special guest. My guests, they were born in Chennai, India. They're a poet who has called Singapore their home since 2002. His work has been heard at Singapore Writers Festival, Borobudur Cultural and Writers Festival, Jaipur Literary Festival, and more. He has taught workshops structured around poetic identity at the Haque Center of Acting and Creativity and is a twice-winning Singapore National Poetry Slam champion. He is currently the creative director of UltraSuperNew Singapore, an advertising agency and art gallery. The world thanks him for inventing velcro and English. Welcome to the podcast, Shivram Gopinath. Shivram, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. How you been?
I've been good. Thank you, Amanda, for having me.
Yes. Of course, the creator of the inventor of velcro in English. You got to come on the podcast. Come on now.
Just a chance to see the good people have helped.
Absolutely, man. I've used your inventions, English and velcro, so long. But so Shivram, tell us a little bit about. You were born in India. I mean, I know that's not too much of a hop and skip from Singapore, but born in India, then moved to Singapore. What caused the move? Or better yet, let's start from the beginning. What is it like growing up in India? How long did you grow up in India for?
Born in Chennai. I grew up first 17 years of my life in India. Between Chennai and this other town called Senji, which is where my father's from. So it was growing up in India was super fun, as you might imagine. It was also growing up with a lot of people around me all the time.
Yeah.
Born into a giant joint family with all of my dad's brothers and sisters and grandmother, and all of us living in the same house in Senji. Moved to Chennai to go to a better school. The school education systems were better in the bigger city. Lived with my aunt and cousins there. So it was another set of wonderful people to grow up with. Then moved to Singapore when I was 17 to go to university here and do a business management degree. So I moved to Singapore.
So you said India. I know you mentioned a lot of people there. I know from the little, I mean, I'm not an expert in India, but from the little I know, I believe the population of the country is in the billions with a B, billions.
Yeah, it's more than a billion with a B.
Yeah. A lot of folks out there. I'm curious what, so you moved to Singapore to go to uni. How was, where did for business management, correct?
Yep.
Business management. So tell us, where did the poetry, how does that enter into the picture? How did that get up in there? Please tell us.
Yeah, I was always interested in language and words. I would say it started off with a real love for Tamil, which is my mother tongue. As I was growing up, I felt a very deep kind of affinity for the language. Because I switched schools from my dad's hometown to Chennai, where it was a bit of a shock to me because all of these kids, and this was around when I was like 10 or something, right? All of the kids were much better in speaking with each other in English than me. So I developed a very quick inferiority complex, that I wasn't able to talk to my friends the way they're talking to each other. And I also had this really stupidly steadfast love for Tamil, and that I would only speak in that. but there was also this complex that was building up within me, right? So I started reading anything really that I could find my hands on that was in English. Any old newspaper or a architectural digest or what have you, right? Anything that was in front of me, I would just start reading, just to get over the fact that I couldn't speak it well enough. So I think the love for words started then, complicated love for words, in order to push down this complex that I was feeling. So I started reading a lot. And when I moved to Singapore, I think what really got me onto poetry was just a series of happenstance meetings. Met this wonderful lady, Deborah Emanuel, another amazing spoken word poet from Singapore. She was organizing like an open mic, right? Which she invited me to, and I was like, yeah, you seem like a cool person. Let me go try this out. And I just starting off with these open mics put me on to poetry, because I suddenly realized I was able to listen to other wonderful people share their thoughts. I was able to write something and be able to perform it to people in front of me, and that buzz sort of caught me. Got this little poetry bug from, I think, that setting. Then I just started writing more and more from there, and more often than not happened to be spoken word.
No, that's very fascinating that it's your kind of literacy is what pushed you into a place to perform live and everything, or I guess lack of literacy, not being able to speak like your other classmates. No, I think that's a very I think that is a very powerful kind of connector tool when people can talk to you or hear your story, because I do think, like you said, you kind of had that syndrome of just like, I would call it imposter syndrome, right? You know what I mean? You're somewhere where you can't do maybe what the majority of people can do, then you actually start believing there's something wrong with you. When the reality is just, no, you're just learning in a different way. And I think that a lot of people have that. I think even a lot of people, and you tell me what you think, I think a lot of people face that with their writing, some sort of imposter syndrome too, especially when you're writing poetry. People definitely niche you into one category. Maybe you're the love poet. I've talked about this before. Maybe the love poet, maybe you the world peace poet, maybe you're the everything is groovy poet, you know what I mean? Or maybe you're the like cool poet, you know what I mean? What for you, what do you, how do you express your writing? How would you define your writing style when you're writing your spoken word and poetry?
I don't know. I'm still developing definitions for what I'm doing, and definitely still suffer from imposter syndrome. It's always there. I think a little bit of it is sprinkled onto my being forever. It's true, and it's especially for spoken word, right? You get kind of pigeonholed into different different boxes, and sometimes you also do things that push you deeper into those boxes, and you maybe start believing other people's definitions of you, or maybe you start believing your own hype, sometimes. I feel like I write a lot about external observations, and I'm always looking out for a bit of the absurdity in these situations, and to naturally gravitate towards things that are just a little bit off, things that are just a little bit weird, a little bit surreal, and sometimes that surreality is rooted in very real realities, but there is something off about them, whether it comes to how we treat each other, whether it comes to race relations, whether it comes to structures of power. I try to see the little absurdities in how we interact with each other, how we interact with the world. Usually those oddities become the subject of my poetry. And I try and write typically with that absurdity being shown off. I feel like that's the easiest way for me to convey the questioning of something, by showing how absurd it is, whether it's through satire or whether it's through experimenting with form. If I'm able to tease out the that little oddness, that I feel like is a pattern that I've seen in my poetry.
Mm, mm. No, that's an interesting way to look at it. You look at the absurdities of just daily life, and you kind of try to form that into what your writing is. I think that creates a really interesting kind of counterbalance, because people, when they hear that, or when they hear your art, or when they see your art, it is almost like that. Like there's a quote I know I remember reading one time. It said, "Art is meant to disturb." Like if your art is meant to disturb people, you know what I mean? And like you said, with these absurdities, you're meant to kind of bring about people something. It's not necessarily to make you feel comfortable. It's meant to really make an impactful statement when you see it in your mind, in your head. So I think that's a really interesting way to put it, and a really dope way to put it. You know, you want to see and bring about absurdities in your writing. So could you give us any type of examples then? I mean, of absurdities that you have, that you kind of bring about through your spoken word?
Yeah, just to your earlier point, definitely an extension to that quote, which I also see on a mural in Singapore. Is,
oh, word, really?
Art is supposed to disturb the comfortable and comfort the disturbed. You know, so there is always a little bit of a needle or a poke when you feel like you need it. But could your poetry also be loving and huggy for those who need it? Absurdities. I mean, Singapore is full of absurdities. This island is chock a block with surprising things, right? It's a real bubble. You see spectrums of reality, and that's where the absurd starts to become, right? I'm just thinking back to a poem where I talk about how I literally walk past a person, and there is a huge migrant worker community here, right? And they are working to build our buildings. They're working to keep our life going. Usually they are in construction, but a lot of them are in construction. You will always see them asking for directions from people they feel like they can approach without hesitation or shame. And that often means people of the same color, right? So they might spot a brown person, if they happen to be from Bangladesh or India, and then you can see their eyes light up and be like, this is a familiar face, and I can interact with this person. And they turn to you, and then if they're lost, they ask for directions, let's say, right? And I find it really weird that they are lost and looking for directions in a place that they're helping to try and build. It's these kind of odd things that just strike me as, like I said, I use the word overtly now, but a little absurd. That kind of a shame, or that kind of annoying feeling at you in this place where you're literally building it. Things like that, just strike me and just stay with me. And not at me instead.
No, wow, that's a good point, because you're right. Like they're asking for putting themselves in a very vulnerable situation of asking for directions when literally you are building, like you said, this place. I mean, that is quite absurd. And they're even hesitant to ask certain people for directions when, again, they are quite literally building this place and this space for everyone to live in, that. Yeah, that's a good. I like that a lot. That's good. I like that a lot. That idea of the absurd and why is that happening? Where is that happening? And most importantly, why is that happening? It is absurd. The world is absurd. The world is weird. Humans are weird. Everything we're absurd. Yeah, I like that a lot. Make your writing absurd because it means you make people uncomfortable because we're living in a very uncomfortable environment for so many people.
And totally, we are so damn weird, and we don't have any other scales of reference, right? We only have our own behaviors to compare ourselves to, and so these kinds of anomalies are exaggerated. I think in the times we're living in now, the world, I feel like, is getting weirder and weirder, and perhaps other people, and including myself, are feeling more and more helpless in a way. Right? Things are speeding past beyond our control. And so these feelings get exaggerated, I think. But I suppose poetry is one way of dealing with it, finding a way to think about it, finding a way to write about it, even though you might start to question what the point of poetry is in a time like this, or a novel like this. And those, have sometimes, illuminating answers, and sometimes you feel defeated too, right? So we're weird. And we got to keep calling ourselves out on this, I think, and I just do that in my own small way.
Absolutely, especially through your writing. There's a famous quote by Angela Davis, the Black feminist activist, writer, speaker, all those great things. She says the world is full of so many painful contradictions, because literally our path in life is just full of so many contradictions, just so many things happening. But then these other things are happening. It's very absurd. So I like that a lot. Yes, we should just keep things absurd, make those points, keep our writing absurd when we get up and perform our spoken word. So let me ask you a little bit about, there's just so much. I want to ask you about these workshops. You have taught workshops structured around poetic identity at the Haque Center of Acting and Creativity. Now, I do my own The Poet Speaks workshops, which are based around Nigerian oral tradition as well as indigenous identity, if you will. I'm curious about you doing those workshops. How did that kind of come about for you? How did that come about? What is the format? What is your goal for when you do your workshops?
Right on. The opportunity to run workshops came through the school itself, which it's a dope acting school, actually. Primarily an acting school. And the person who runs it, Camille Haque, is turned out to be a good friend of mine over many sort of initially chance meetings and talks, and he sort of brought up the idea of me being able to conduct workshops, or poetry workshops, which they had never done. And I had always sort of had wanted to find out what my own process was. It was very haphazard, and I'm not a very disciplined writer. I'm a very give me a deadline and I'll work towards it no matter what kind of writer. And so I wanted to break down my own process of how I was writing and how I could be writing. And so when he offered the chance of a workshop, I was like, okay, let me then, when I need to share with other people how they may be able to write or perform poetry, I'd be able to find out more about my own process. So that's how it started. It's usually constructed over 4 to 6 weeks. Each session is about 3 or 4 hours. And a lot of times the people that are in the workshop are writing poetry for the first time in my lives, first time in their lives and in mine, but also writing to be performed for the first time. Right? Yeah.
No, I find that, no, I think that's a very good thing that you're doing. And I know for me, as someone that conducts workshops as a teacher as well, it's one thing performing poetry, but do you find, I know for me, I find it teaching people how to create it, teaching people how to even just think about it. It really, for me, it drives home the point of how hard we as poets work, and how hard spoken word it is to perform spoken word when you teach people it. How do you feel about that? Do you feel similar, teaching poetry as opposed to performing it, being the artist versus being the teacher?
Yeah, it is incredibly tiring. But it is also, there's always spark plugs going off in my head, right? Because how do you teach something that is so ephemeral, that is so unique to each person? There are techniques and there are traditions, there are even your own experiences, but when that gets translated to other people, it changes completely within them, right? So firstly, is figuring out how do you teach something that you yourself are learning all the damn time, because you are. So that part is hard. I feel like there is a nice balance between the two, you learning and another person learning with you. A lot of the activities or parts of the workshop that we work on are understanding instinctively or understanding very obviously and being on the same page with the fact that this is what is happening, that both of us are learning together. I am just showing you different ways in which you may tap into poetic identities within yourself, as in what are the things you start to want to observe, how do you want to express them, what could your inspirations be, what is how do you battle with things like your inner critic, because that's the first, I think, thing stopping a lot of people from writing anything, right? Because they think, I'm not a poet, and whatever I'm going to write is gonna be not poetry, and therefore I will never be a poet, right? So it's getting through those hurdles with, I suppose, the shared experience of myself having, being in a process of getting through them. So it's that balance of two groups learning from each other, one being me and the other being everybody else, right? So that's how I sort of see it and construct it and then go through.
Absolutely, it's definitely an exchange of space and I guess you could really say spirit going on, because how do you teach someone something that is such as poetry, which is a really just far-reaching, so many different ideas of what poetry means. How do you truly teach that subject? So I think that's great, and it seems like that's how you kind of how do you feel like you best connect through your writing with people?
I feel I best connect when I am in front of them and I'm able to say it to them. I mean, this is why spoken word is so lovely, right? You get such instant feedback. You get the benefit of them kind of being able to hear you, which happens, not as often as should. I think, when I'm able to be in front of an audience is where I feel I best connect with them. It is also the most nerve-wracking. So it is also the most sort of like, visceral experience for me, because you go from this, wonderfully lonely time when you're writing and there's nobody else, and then you go to people, and then it's immediate, and they're there, and they're either laughing or smirking or whatever the reactions are. that connection is hard to beat.
Yeah, facts.
Yeah, that's why, yeah, spoken word is exists, right?
Mhm. Yeah,
um, yeah,
absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. I think that it's that connection in front of people. I mean, like you can't really beat that stage, being on stage, really performing like that full body experience. You get immediate reaction, and it's just like the best thing for me is when you're performing and you see it in people's faces. When you say you drop some magic bars, when you drop something
sure.
that that they really connect with you, that like you
Yeah.
can really see people really like it really hits them. And I think for me that's such an amazing feeling. Just through the oral tradition of just word to word, my mouth to this person's ears, their mouth to my ears is a really kind of, I think, really magical thing. So I'm curious too, for you, do you engage in any oral traditions, let's say with your Indian heritage? Do you engage in any of that with your poetry?
um, I think, yeah, I'm whether I like it or not, I suppose deeply influenced by, Indian traditions
Yeah.
and oral traditions. I do love reading and writing in Tamil, which is my mother tongue, right? And that language um, comes with its own very rich traditions and histories. So a lot of my writing, even in English, I think is influenced by my speaking another language.
Mm.
I'm very influenced by Tamil poetry and poets, um, even though I don't write that much in Tamil anymore because the imposter syndrome, I feel like I've gotten over in English. I haven't gotten over becoming a poet in Tamil because it is
Wow.
much too huge a behemoth of a language for me to even, attempt to think of myself as a poet in it,
Wow.
um, because yeah, there is that the mother tongue uh, feeling on it. Whereas English, I feel much more casual about because I learned it, so it's
Yeah.
cool, and I got over it. But Tamil seems like much more intimidating for me, even though it is a language that I was born and grew up speaking. Right, I'm born into and grew up speaking. The traditions from there, I still am very influenced by. There are ancient texts that you get taught in school. There's couplets called there's a series of a book of couplets called Tirukkural, which
Mm.
is these truths about life and living in the world and how to be. Just these like two lines, and that's one of the first things you get taught in school in Tamil,
Mm.
and so much meaning sort of invested into just these two lines. That in itself, when you think back, is mind blowing. That you are taught that technique as a child, and then you get introduced to other Tamil poets, people like Bharatiya, who's a freedom fighter, a poet, and back in the day, freedom fighter. Was a real firebrand of a man, and also an amazing poet who wrote a lot about how we would treat each other and finding strength within you. He was a very sort of like an inspiring poet from those times. So I get introduced to people like him and his work. And then there is also just a lot of poetry in the form of song through film, right? India is a massive movie industry,
Yes. Bollywood.
and yeah, Bollywood. And where I come from, Tamil Nadu has its own Tamil language films, right, which they affectionately refer to as Kollywood.
Mm.
Yeah, and a lot of those movies have 5 to 6 songs in them, and
Yeah.
each of those songs are written in some sort of poetic form. So every movie you're watching, you're listening to songs, and songs are often poetic. So I think you just grow up with a lot of lyric. You just grow up with a lot of this oral tradition. And so all of these influences, so everyone from things like Tirukkural, which you get taught in school, to Bharatiyar, to these songs and movies, I think huge part of how I write now.
Absolutely. No, I think there's a beautiful thing to be influenced by your culture, by your mother tongue. Even though it's I definitely I understand what you mean. It definitely is. Yeah, I could only imagine. Yeah, it's because that is your mother tongue. You want to be, yeah, like you said, you still have imposter syndrome in that. I think people may find that interesting, that even though that being your kind of your origins, you still do find it like finding yourself to say that you're a proper poet, and that is hard for you still. But I mean,
I'm not.
it's some real stuff. No, that's some real stuff for sure. I'm curious because you're a twice winning Singapore National Poetry Slam champion. How
Mhm.
how tell the folks a little bit about that, your experience with slam poetry in Singapore and winning the Singapore National Poetry Slam Championships twice. Tell us a little bit about that.
Hmm. Um, yeah, it was a small but growing community, right, of spoken word when I first started doing that in Singapore. With what, 2012, maybe, perhaps, when I started, 2012, 2011, start of the decade. Um, and there's a group here called Word Forward who bring that slam format, uh, slam poetry format, the 3 rounds and the points and all of that into Singapore. Um, Two people, Chris Mooney Singh, and his wife, I believe, were bringing that format and running those slams in Singapore. Apart from the other open mics and poetry sharing that was happening, so it was through these poetry slams, which was super exciting to be part of, right? Because it's competitive and it's a little rowdy, and
Yeah.
and the crowd kind of like eggs you on, or boos you off, or or what have you.
Yes, sir.
Um,
Yeah.
right. So that format was really fun to be at, and I think they hosted through that happened every month, and it became a series of events where poets were able to kind of develop themselves in that format of being really quick and visual, and being kind of a little bit theatrical, and a lot more effective. And I think through that series was a group of poets, including myself, that I think really took to that form. And Word Forward also ended up organizing the National Poetry Slam Championship, and it was with a lot of familiar faces, because we'd all come through that kind of slam poetry ringer. Happened to win, really, because I think it turned out to be consecutive wins as well, which honestly sounds a lot more dramatic than it actually was. But I was happy to kind of test myself in that format, because I am a nervous wreck even now in front of people when it comes to like performing poetry. So to be able to win something through your just your words was a gratifying feeling. I kind of subscribe nothing else beyond that. But a lot of fun, because it's friends you're competing with, and there's a little bit of needle and healthy competition.
Yeah.
But it's also gratifying to see that even when you are being judged, and even though it's sort of like, fun judging, right? It's random people in the audience, right, that are judging you. It is gratifying to know that people are being affected by what you say. So that validation is nice. So I am grateful for those wins to give me that.
Yeah, for sure. Wow, no. I think that's a great concept. It's interesting looking at Singapore's slam poetry scene. Like you said, how it kind of came together where it became a place to really nurture talent as people were just kind of going through it. And then slam poetry, for anyone that doesn't know, it's a very kind of definitely is very competitive, but it's also very freeing, because it is just you're not necessarily in the same space of when you're just kind of performing a spoken word piece. With slam poetry, you're getting your words out the way how you want to get them out in that moment and everything. So it definitely has that different kind of twist and tinge to it, if you will, that different flavor, slam poetry for sure, that impromptu, all that stuff. Yeah. So I am this has been such a great convo, and as we're wrapping up, so many things I'm kind of taking away from this. You talk about absurdity in writing, writing the absurd, all these things, teaching and writing, all these things. Now I'm going to ask you a question. I ask every poet that spoken word poet that comes on here, why do you need to get your words out?
I feel like I am in both a position of privilege, in that I am able to express myself in a language that is understood by a lot of people. Through the lottery of my birth, I found myself in a place where it is willing to have me and listen to me. So I find the using that, and it is both a privilege and an achievement, right? It is also not just been handed to me. I've also worked for it. And I'm able to sort of look at things and observe them. So I have that kind of inclination as well. So if I have these inclinations and I have these skills and I have this lottery, I feel like it is my place to let other people share my observations. I'm in a very unique position. Not a lot of people come to a point where they can even think of calling themselves a poet, right? And if I have arrived at that point to myself, then I feel like then it's a bit of a responsibility, but it's a very freeing responsibility that I want to, write something that I want other people. So it's that always little push and pull that makes me keep wanting to not just write, but share it. Yeah.
For sure. Beautiful, 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 beautiful. So please do tell us, as we are wrapping up now, what is the rest of 2021? We're almost done. And what does 2022 look like for Shivram in terms of his writing and beyond? And where can we find any type of work that you have, any social media handles and stuff?
I'm piss poor on social media. Actually, and sharing my work, but I think what's happening is there's a lot more, I suppose, projects that are video based that are in the works. So working with the National Gallery in Singapore, responding to pieces in their collection through poetry. I think projects like that will be coming out, just exploring another way of, putting my work forward instead of in the absence of, live audiences. Other than that, I think I suppose my big sort of personal headline is the book I'm working on. hopefully that comes. Hopefully I'm able to finish it like I should, and have it be published next year. So that would be sort of, in terms of poetry, the big thing that I want to look out for self and make happen.
Absolutely. Oh, this has been great. Shivram, I know you said no social media, but any place we can find, website, anything we could get it off, Facebook page, anything.
Yeah, you could find me on Facebook, Shivram Gopinath. You can find me on Instagram, which is rat emoji, as in RAT emoji. And you would hopefully find a Shivram there who is much more immediate with sharing his poetry. But if there's anything to be found, it would usually be on there.
Perfect. All right. Shivram, thank you so much. This has been such an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Poet Speak podcast today.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Amanda. What an amazing start to a lovely Saturday.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. And this is the Poet Speaks podcast. We will talk to you soon. Bye-bye, everybody.